Welcome to Kieu Dung's channel. If this is your very first time visiting, we're so happy to have you here. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share this video with your friends so you won't miss any of our warm and heartfelt stories. Today, we invite you to join the simple yet beautiful journey of a loving single mother, Sung Luyen, and her little daughter, Kieu Dung. Today, we'll take a peaceful look into their everyday life. In the little garden next to their humble thatched house, they will gently clear the soil and carefully plant tiny seeds of fresh vegetables. Each seed carries a little hope, and one day this garden will be filled with green leaves and sweet fruits, just like the love that always fills their small home. So, make yourself comfortable, and let's get started.
Like every other day, the morning began in silence. The sky was still wrapped in a thin layer of mist, and distant roosters crowed from faraway houses. Sung Luyen quietly rose from her blanket, her bare feet touching the cool earthen floor of their small thatched home. She walked softly to the corner where the old clay stove sat. She stacked a few dry sticks of firewood and lit them. The crackling of the fire filled the air, and the warm glow danced across her sun-kissed face. On the table, she placed a handful of white rice, a few fresh greens picked from their garden yesterday, and a small pinch of salt. It wasn't much, but she wanted to make a warm breakfast for her little family. A tiny candle flickered on the shelf, casting a soft golden glow across the quiet morning. In that peaceful moment, the humble house felt like the warmest place in the world.
While the rice was gently steaming on the old clay stove, the little house remained wrapped in a calm hush. Beneath a thin blanket in the corner, tiny Kieu Dung began to stir. Her small body shifted with a soft sigh, and her tiny fingers curled as if chasing a dream. Slowly, her sleepy eyes fluttered open, blinking at the warm golden glow flickering from the fire. Sung Luyen turned at the faint rustle and smiled tenderly. She set the spoon down and walked softly across the room, her footsteps barely making a sound on the cool earthen floor. Kneeling down, she whispered, "Good morning, my little one," before gently scooping her daughter into her arms. She carried the sleepy child to a small basin filled with warm water she had prepared earlier. With calloused but loving hands, she dipped a cloth into the water and began to wash her daughter's tiny face. The cool droplets danced on her skin, making the little girl giggle, her laughter rising like the first sweet song of the new day. Breakfast was finally ready. The gentle aroma of freshly steamed rice filled the small house as Sung Luyen laid out their meal on an old bamboo mat in the center of the room. She placed each dish carefully, a pot of fluffy white rice still releasing little puffs of steam, a small bowl of clear vegetable broth sprinkled with bits of green onion, and a plate of tender boiled greens glistening from the morning light. Kieu Dung sat cross-legged across from her mother, eyes wide with delight. She clasped her chopsticks eagerly, her little voice bubbling with excitement as she began talking about the tiny butterflies she had chased in the garden the day before, yellow ones that danced like petals in the wind. Luyen listened silently, smiling with quiet pride. She didn't have much to offer her daughter, yet in this humble home, every warm meal and every shared smile felt more precious than gold. There were no televisions here, no noise of the city, only the soft clinking of spoons and the bright laughter of a little girl. After breakfast, Kieu Dung hopped up eagerly to help her mother. One by one, she carried the small bowls over to the basin, her tiny feet padding softly across the wooden floor. Sung Luyen stood by the water, gently washing each dish while her daughter watched the bubbles shimmer and pop. When Luyen dried the bowls, Jung clapped her hands as if it were a magic trick, making them both laugh. It was only a simple chore, yet filled with warmth, and a quiet lesson that even the smallest tasks can be joyful when done with love. Once the dishes were done, Sung Luyen gently brushed her daughter's soft hair, her fingers moving slowly as the morning sunlight spilled across the floor. "I'm going to the market to buy some new seeds and garden netting," she said softly, tucking a loose strand behind Kieu Dung's ear. "Stay home, be good, and don't go out on the road, all right?" Kieu Dung nodded eagerly, her eyes bright. She loved helping in the garden almost as much as she loved hearing her mother's praise. As soon as her mother disappeared down the winding dirt path, the little girl hurried to the backyard, her small feet pattering lightly. The garden was coming alive, rows of young green plants reaching up toward the warm sun. The air was sweet with the smell of damp soil. Birds chirped from the bamboo trees as she knelt on the soft earth. Carefully, she pulled out tiny weeds one by one, her little fingers gentle, making sure not to hurt the tender sprouts. She worked quietly, thinking of how happy her mother would be when she returned.
Before long,
All she
Sung
wanted
Luyen
was
returned,
to make her
carrying
proud.
a bundle of new netting and a small bag of colorful seed packets. From afar, Kieu Dung spotted her and squealed with delight, running to meet her. She hugged her mother tightly, as though the whole morning she had been waiting for this moment. They carried the items back inside and sat together under the shade of a tree to rest for a while, enjoying the fresh, earthy smell left behind by last night's rain.
On the porch, Sung Luyen brought out a ripe golden papaya, its skin glowing softly in the morning light. She placed it gently on a wooden plate, and Kieu Dung scooted closer, her eyes wide with anticipation. Together, they peeled away the thin skin, their fingers sticky with sweet juice, and sliced the fruit into soft orange wedges. The juicy papaya melted on their tongues, cool and refreshing. Kieu Dung giggled happily, and for a moment, time seemed to slow, a quiet pause before their long day's work in the garden. As the sun climbed higher, Sung Luyen and Kieu Dung carried their tools to the garden, the wooden handles knocking softly against their legs with each step. Today, the little garden would get a brand new look, and excitement shimmered in the warm air. Sung Luyen bent down and began gathering dry leaves and broken twigs scattered across the soil, her hands moving steadily and carefully. Meanwhile, Kieu Dung scurried about like a cheerful sparrow, collecting small stones and piling them neatly at the edge of the garden bed. Birds chirped above them, their bright notes echoing through the trees, while the breeze rustled gently through the bamboo, creating a soft, soothing song. Side by side, mother and daughter worked, their laughter mixing with the sounds of nature. When the space was finally cleared, Sung Luyen straightened her back and reached for the iron digging bar lying nearby. It was heavy, cold in her hands, but she held it with quiet determination. She walked slowly along the garden's edge, measuring the distance with careful steps, marking where each fence post would stand. Then she raised the bar and drove it into the soil with a dull thud. The ground was firm, and each strike took effort. Sweat beaded on her forehead, glistening in the sun, yet her movements never faltered. She knew a sturdy fence would protect their hard work, keeping out the neighbors' chickens and the wandering dogs that often came scratching at the vegetables. Meanwhile, Kieu Dung sat cross-legged on the ground, watching eagerly. She counted each hole out loud, like it was a game, clapping her hands and cheering every time her mother finished one, her laughter brightening the hot afternoon air.
When the holes were ready, Sung Luyen brought out cut cassava branches. She placed each one upright in the holes, pressing the soil tightly around them to make them stand firm. Each post was like a quiet promise that she would protect this garden, just as she protected her daughter's peaceful childhood.
Next, Sung Luyen unrolled the bundle of new garden netting, the thin mesh glinting in the sunlight as it spread across the ground. She carefully lifted one end and began stretching it around the garden's edge, her fingers moving with calm precision. She pulled the netting straight and snug, pressing it gently against each cassava post, then tied it firmly in place with pieces of twine. The knots were small but strong, just like the hopes she carried in her heart. Kieu Dung followed close behind her, holding the strings in her tiny hands, passing them one by one as if they were treasures. Her wide, curious eyes watched every movement, trying to remember how her mother did it. When the final knot was tied, Sung Luyen stepped back, brushing the dust from her hands. A soft smile bloomed on her face, one full of quiet pride, because she knew they had just built another layer of safety around their little patch of hope.
Sung Luyen knelt on the warm earth and opened the small paper seed packets one by one. Inside were tiny seeds, so light they almost floated in the breeze. She held a few in her palm and showed them to Kieu Dung, who leaned in close, her eyes wide with wonder. "They're so small," Kieu Dung whispered, "like tiny specks of morning dew." Sung Luyen smiled gently. "Yes, but inside each one is life, just waiting for its chance to grow." She showed her daughter how to draw shallow rows in the soft soil with the tip of her finger. Together, they dropped each seed gently into its little furrow, careful not to crowd them. Then they brushed the earth back over the top, patting it down softly as though tucking the seeds into bed. They worked slowly, quietly, side by side, their shadows stretching long across the garden. The faint patter of falling dirt blended with the rhythm of their quickened heartbeats. A soft breeze passed, carrying the earthy scent of the soil and the quiet murmur of birds in the trees. Every movement was tender and full of care, as if they were planting not just vegetables, but pieces of their dreams. Each seed they placed into the ground held more than the hope of future food. It carried a promise of brighter days ahead, of full harvest baskets, and of a life slowly blooming under the same sun that warmed their backs that afternoon.
With the tiny seeds now tucked safely in the warm soil, Sung Luyen fetched a small bucket from the porch and filled it with cool water. She carried it back carefully, sunlight glimmering on the rippling surface. Kneeling down, she tipped the bucket gently, letting the water soak into the earth. The dry soil darkened, drinking deeply like it had been waiting all morning. Beside her, Kieu Dung followed with her little tin cup, sprinkling each row with careful hands. A few drops splashed onto her cheeks, and she giggled, the sounds soft and bright, like wind chimes in the breeze. When they finished watering the new seeds, they moved on to the older vegetables, lush green leaves already standing tall. Each plant seemed to whisper of their hard work, the early mornings, the patient weeding, the quiet hope that had carried them this far. Sung Luyen paused, standing in the middle of their small garden. Around her rose the new fence posts, the soft rose of fresh soil, and the gentle smell of wet earth. She knelt down and hugged her daughter close, feeling the tiny heartbeat pressed against her chest. For a moment, the world was silent. Because to her, as long as her daughter could grow up safe, loved, and full of hope, every hardship was worth it. It was just another ordinary day, but a day overflowing with love. Thank you for joining us today on this warm and simple journey. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share, and subscribe so you won't miss the next heartwarming story from their little home. See you in the next video.